The Chicago morning was sharp and gray, the October wind slicing through the loop where skyscrapers cast long shadows over the Chicago River. Ellen Ramsey stood on the corner of Wacker Drive, her scarf fluttering as she clutched a paper coffee cup from a nearby intelligentsia. The city buzzed around her, taxis honking, pedestrians weaving past with purposeful strides, the distant rumble of the L train echoing like a heartbeat. At 52, Ellen was a fixture in this urban pulse, her real estate office just blocks away. But today her world felt unsteady, like the ground had shifted beneath her. She'd been scrolling through her phone, expecting a save the date, or at least a text about her son Michael's wedding. He'd proposed to his fiancée, Sarah, 6 months ago, and Ellen had been thrilled, diving into plans with the enthusiasm of a mother who'd waited years for this moment. She'd even put down a $10,000 deposit for the venue, a stunning rooftop at the Art Institute of Chicago with views of Millennium Park and Lake Michigan. But the wedding was 3 months away and no invitation had arrived, not even a call. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from her best friend Diane, who ran a bakery in Logan Square. Diane, "Still no invite? You talked to Michael yet?" Ellen sighed, her fingers hovering over the screen. "Not yet. He's been busy. I'll call him today." She pocketed the phone and crossed the street, her low heels clicking on the pavement. The air smelled of diesel and roasted chestnuts from a vendor's cart, a familiar Chicago mix that usually grounded her. But today, it did little to ease the knot in her chest. Michael, her only child, had always been close to her through his awkward teenage years, his college days at Northwestern, even his move to a sleek condo in River North with Sarah. But lately he'd been distant, his calls brief, his texts vague. She'd chalked it up to wedding stress, but the silence felt heavier now. Back at her office, a glass-walled space with a view of the Willis Tower, Ellen settled at her desk, surrounded by listings for Gold Coast condos and Lakeview brownstones. Real estate was her domain. She'd built a career on negotiation, charm, and grit, raising Michael alone after her husband left when he was 5. But no deal had ever felt as high stakes as this. She dialed Michael's number, her heart thudding. As it rang, "Hey, Mom," he answered, his voice clipped, distracted. She could hear the hum of a coffee shop in the background, probably one of those trendy spots in Wicker Park. "Michael," she said, keeping her tone light, "I was just wondering about the wedding invites. They go out soon, right?" A pause. Too long. "Yeah, about that," he said, his voice tightening. "We're keeping it small, really small, just close friends and Sarah's family." Ellen's grip on the phone tightened, the words sinking in like a slow blade. "Small," she repeated, her voice steady despite the sting. "So, I'm not on the list?" Another pause. "It's not personal, Mom. Sarah's parents are paying for most of it, and they wanted to keep it intimate. We figured you'd understand." "Understand?" Her voice rose and she caught herself, glancing at the open office door. She lowered it. "Michael, I put down the deposit for the venue, $10,000. I've been planning this with you." "I know," he said, and she could hear the guilt in his voice. "We'll pay you back. It's just complicated. Sarah's mom has strong opinions, and we're trying to keep the peace." Ellen's jaw clenched. Sarah's mom, Linda, was a Gold Coast socialite with a penchant for control. Ellen had met her once at an engagement dinner and felt the woman's judgment like a cold wind. But this, cutting her out of her own son's wedding, it was a betrayal she hadn't seen coming. "I need to go," Michael said, his voice rushed. "I'll call you later, okay?" He hung up before she could respond. Ellen stared at her phone, the screen blurring as her eyes stung. She wasn't one to cry. Years of single motherhood and cutthroat real estate deals had toughened her, but this hurt. Her son, her Michael, had chosen Sarah's family over her. By noon, Ellen was at Diane's Bakery in Logan Square, a cozy spot with mismatched tables and the warm smell of cinnamon rolls. Diane, a wiry woman with flour-dusted curls, slid a plate of scones across the counter. "Talk," she said, her brown eyes sharp with concern. Ellen recounted the call, her voice steady but brittle. "He didn't even sound sorry," she finished, breaking a scone in half. "Just resigned, like I'm an inconvenience." Diane leaned on the counter, her apron smudged with icing. "He's under Sarah's mom's thumb. You know how those types are, but cutting you out, that's cold. I don't know what to do," Ellen admitted, stirring her coffee. "I put down that deposit because I wanted to give him something special. Now I feel like a fool." "You're not a fool," Diane said firmly. "You're his mom, and if he's going to play these games, maybe it's time to remind him who you are." Ellen raised an eyebrow. "What, like take back the deposit?" Diane grinned. "Exactly. You paid for it. You can unpay it." The idea was absurd, petty, even, but it sparked something in Ellen, a flicker of defiance. She'd spent years putting Michael first, sacrificing her own dreams to give him a future. If he was going to push her away, maybe it was time to push back. That afternoon, Ellen called the Art Institute's event coordinator, her voice calm but resolute. "I need to cancel the deposit for the Ramsey Klein wedding," she said, her heart pounding. "Yes, I'm the one who paid it. Send the refund to my account." The coordinator hesitated, citing policy, but Ellen's years in real estate had honed her negotiation skills. By the end of the call, the refund was processing, and she felt a strange mix of guilt and empowerment. She wasn't sure if she'd tell Michael yet, but the act itself was a line in the sand. She spent the rest of the day at her office, fielding calls about listings but distracted, her mind replaying Michael's words. "It's not personal." How could it not be? She'd raised him, bandaged his skinned knees, cheered at his soccer games, paid for his college. And now she was an afterthought. Her phone buzzed, a text from Michael. "Michael, Mom, can we talk? Sarah's upset about the guest list. I might have screwed up." Ellen stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of her wanted to call him, to fix it, to be the mom who always made things right. But another part, the part that had just reclaimed $10,000, wanted him to feel the weight of his choice. She typed back, "Let's meet tomorrow. Coffee at Intelligentsia, 10 a.m. As she hit send, the Chicago skyline glowed under a setting sun, the river reflecting its fiery hues. Ellen felt the city's energy, its resilience, and she knew she'd need it for what came next. Her son had drawn a line, and she'd drawn one too. The question was where they'd go from here. Chapter 2. Coffee and Consequences. The Chicago morning was raw, a damp chill seeping through the streets as Ellen Ramsey pushed through the glass doors of Intelligentsia Coffee on Randolph Street. The I-Loop was waking up, its sidewalks crowded with commuters in wool coats and baristas calling orders over the hiss of espresso machines. The air smelled of roasted beans and wet pavement, a quintessentially Chicago mix that Ellen usually found comforting. Today, though, her stomach was a knot of nerves and resolve as she scanned the cafe for her son, Michael. He was already there, tucked into a corner booth by the window, his dark hair tousled and his navy sweater slightly rumpled, like he hadn't slept well. At 28, Michael still had the boyish features Ellen remembered from his childhood, but his eyes were guarded now, carrying a weight she didn't recognize. He was sipping a latte, his phone face down on the table, a small gesture that told her he was at least trying to be present. "Mom," he said, standing as she approached. His voice was tentative, and he hesitated before offering a quick hug. It was stiff, not the warm embrace she'd grown used to over the years. "Michael," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. She set her purse down, her coffee cup steaming between her hands. "Thanks for meeting me," he nodded, his fingers tapping the table. "Yeah, I know things got weird yesterday, I'm sorry." Ellen took a slow sip of her coffee, letting the bitterness ground her. Weird's one way to put it, she said, her tone calm but edged. You took me off your wedding guest list, Michael. Your mother. I'm trying to understand why. He winced, looking out the window at the passing crowd. The L train rumbled overhead, its clatter filling the silence. It's not what you think, he said finally. Sarah's parents, Linda especially, they're particular. They're footing most of the bill, and they wanted a small guest list. Like, really small, 50 people max. And I didn't. Make the cut? Ellen's voice was steady, but the hurt seeped through. I put down $10,000 for the venue, Michael. I thought I was part of this. You are, he said quickly, leaning forward. I mean, you were. It's just Linda's got this vision and Sarah's trying to keep her happy. I didn't want to fight them on it. I thought you'd understand. Ellen's jaw tightened. She'd met Linda Klein once, at that tense engagement dinner in River North, where Linda had dominated the conversation with talk of caterers and designers, her Gold Coast polish masking a steely need for control. Ellen had bitten. Her tongue then, for Michael's sake, but this was different. This was a betrayal. I don't understand, she said, her voice low. I raised you alone, Michael. Paid for your school, your soccer camps, your college. I've been there for every milestone. And now I'm not even invited to your wedding? Michael's face reddened, and he rubbed the back of his neck. I know, Mom, I screwed up. I should have fought harder. But Sarah's stressed, and I'm trying to keep things calm. I didn't think it. Sir Ellen's chest ached, not just at his words, but at the guilt in his eyes. She'd always been his protector, his cheerleader. But now she felt like a stranger to him. You didn't think it had hurt me. He looked down at his latte, his shoulders slumping. I didn't mean to. I just got caught up in the middle. Sarah's parents are intense, and I thought it'd be easier to go along. Easier, Ellen repeated the word sharp. She set her cup down, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. And the venue deposit, the one I paid for, was that supposed to be easier too? His eyes widened. You took it back. I did, she said, her voice firm. Yesterday after our call. If I'm not part of the wedding, I'm not funding it. Michael's mouth opened, then closed. Mom, that's a big deal. The venue's booked. Sarah's counting on it. Then you should have thought about that before cutting me out, she said, her tone colder than she intended. She softened, hating the distance between them. Michael, I want to be there for you, but I'm not a bank account. I'm your mother. He stared at her, his expression a mix of shock and regret. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I'll fix this, okay? I'll talk to Sarah. We'll get you back on the list. Ellen's heart twisted. She wanted to believe him, but the hurt ran deep. I hope so, she said, standing. I need to get to work. Let me know what you decide. She left before he could respond, the cafe door swinging shut behind her. The Chicago wind hit her hard, stinging her eyes as she walked toward her office. She wasn't sure if she was crying or if it was just the cold, but she didn't stop to find out. That afternoon, Ellen sat in her office, staring at a listing for a Lakeview condo, but seeing Michael's face instead. Her phone buzzed. A call from Diane. You okay? Diane asked, her voice warm through the line. Ellen sighed, leaning back in her chair. I just saw Michael. He apologized, but it's messy. Messy how? Diane asked. Ellen recounted the coffee shop conversation, her voice breaking only. Once, I took back the deposit, Di. I was so angry. I just did it. Diane let out a low whistle. Damn, Ellen. That's bold. How'd he take it? Like I'd slapped him, she admitted. He says he'll fix it, but I don't know if I can trust him right now. Give him time, Diane said. He's caught between you and that Linda woman. Sounds like a nightmare. Ellen laughed, a small, bitter sound. Yeah, I just thought after everything he'd choose me. He's your kid, Diane said. He will, but you got to show him you mean business. Taking the deposit was a good start. Ellen wasn't so sure. The deposit felt like a power move, a way to reclaim her dignity, but now it felt petty, like she'd stooped to Linda's level. She thanked Diane and hung up, her gaze drifting to the Chicago skyline. The city was tough, resilient, like her. She'd survive this, but she wasn't sure what this would become. That evening, Ellen's phone buzzed again. A text from Sarah, Michael's fiancée, whom she'd only met a handful of times. Sarah was a quiet, thoughtful woman, an architect with a love for Chicago's historic buildings, but she'd always seemed overshadowed by her mother. "Sarah, can we meet? Just us? Tomorrow at the Drake? 7 p.m.? Ellen's eyebrows rose. The Drake was an old-school Chicago landmark, all elegance and history. She typed back, "I'll be there." She spent the rest of the evening at home in her Lincoln Park condo, a cozy space filled with photos of Michael, his high school graduation, their trip to Lake Michigan, his first day at Northwestern. She poured a glass of wine, staring at the photos, her heart heavy. She'd cancelled the deposit out of hurt, but now she wondered if she'd pushed too far. The next evening, the Drake's Palm Court was a vision of timeless luxury. Chandeliers casting, soft light over velvet chairs, a harpist playing in the corner. Ellen arrived early, dressed in a tailored black dress, her nerves masked by years of real estate poise. Sarah was already there, seated at a small table with a pot of tea. Her auburn hair was pulled back, her face pale but composed. Her green dress simple yet elegant. "Ellen," Sarah said, standing to offer a hesitant smile. "Thanks for coming." Ellen sat, her posture straight. "You sounded like you had something to say." Sarah nodded, pouring tea with slightly shaky hands. "I owe you an apology. The guest list, it wasn't my idea. My mum, she's used to getting her way, and I let her take over. I didn't realize you weren't invited until yesterday." Ellen's chest tightened, but she kept her voice even. "Michael said it was about keeping it small. 50 people." Sarah's eyes dropped to her cup. "That's what Mom wanted. She said a big wedding would look ostentatious. But I should have checked the list myself. I'm so sorry, Ellen." The sincerity in Sarah's voice softened Ellen's edges, but not entirely. "I put down the deposit for your venue," she said. $10,000. I thought I was part of this family." Sarah's face crumpled. "You are?" Michael was devastated when he told me. "He said you took the deposit back and Oh, why, I'd be furious too." Ellen sipped her tea, the warmth doing little to ease the chill inside her. "So why am I here, Sarah?" Sarah leaned forward, her eyes earnest. "I want you at the wedding. Michael does too. We're expanding the guest list. Mum's not happy, but it's our wedding. I need you to reinstate the deposit if you're willing. We'll cover any fees." Ellen studied her, searching for a catch. "And Linda, she's okay with this." Sarah's lips twitched into a small smile. "She'll have to be. I'm done letting her run the show." Ellen felt a spark of respect for Sarah, who'd seemed so quiet before. Maybe she'd misjudged her. "I'll call the venue tomorrow," she said. "But I need to hear this from Michael." Sarah nodded. "He's coming over tonight. He'll call you." That night, Michael called. His voice was softer, more like the boy she'd raised. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said. "I was an idiot. You're on the guest list, front and center. Please come." Ellen's eyes stung, but she held her voice steady. "I'll be there, Michael, but we need to talk more. No more shutting me out." "I promise," he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. The next day, Ellen reinstated the deposit, her heart lighter but still cautious. Chicago's skyline glowed outside her window, a reminder of the city's strength and her own. The road to the wedding wouldn't be easy, but she and Michael were family, and family fought through the hurt. The Chicago skyline shimmered under a late October sunset, its glass towers reflecting hues of orange and purple as the city settled into evening. Ellen Ramsey stood on her Lincoln Park condo's balcony, the wind tugging at her scarf as she sipped a glass of Merlot. Below, Lakeshore Drive hummed with traffic. headlights weaving like fireflies along the lakefront. The air carried the faint tang of Lake Michigan and the distant aroma of deep dish pizza from a nearby restaurant, a reminder of the city's heartbeat. At 52, Ellen had navigated Chicago's real estate market with grit and grace, but tonight her thoughts were on her son, Michael, and the fragile bridge they were rebuilding. It had been 2 days since her meeting with Sarah at the Drake, where Sarah's apology and resolve had softened Ellen's anger. Michael's call that night, his voice thick with regret, had cracked her defenses further. He'd promised to include her in the wedding, to make things right. But the hurt lingered like a bruise. She'd reinstated the $10,000 venue deposit. That morning, a decision that felt both like a victory and a surrender. The Art Institute's rooftop would host the wedding after all, but Ellen wasn't sure where she stood with her son or with herself. Her phone buzzed on the balcony railing, a text from Diane, her best friend, who was probably needing dough. At her Logan Square bakery. "Diane, you okay after the Sarah talk? Heard from Michael yet?" Ellen typed back, her fingers chilled by the evening air. He called. "I'm back on the guest list. Feeling mixed." "Coffee tomorrow?" Diane. "Hell yeah. 9 a.m. at my place. Bring your game face." Ellen smiled, setting the phone down. Diane's no-nonsense support had carried her through worse than this. Divorce, single motherhood, the cutthroat world of real estate. But this rift with Michael was different. It wasn't just about the wedding, it was about losing the boy who'd once clung to her hand, trusting her to fix everything. Now, at 28, he was a man caught between his fiancée's family and his own, and Ellen had to decide how to meet him halfway. The next morning, Ellen walked into Diane's bakery, the warm scent of cinnamon and yeast wrapping around her like a hug. The place was a cozy haven in Logan Square, its walls lined with local art and mismatched chairs filled with regulars. Diane was behind the counter, her curls dusted with flour, her apron tied loose. She slid a mug of coffee and a warm scone across to Ellen, her brown eyes sharp with concern. "Spill," Diane said, leaning on the counter. "What's the deal with Michael?" Ellen broke the scone, steam rising from its golden crust. "He's sorry, or so he says. Sarah too. They're expanding the guest list. And I'm back in. I put the deposit back yesterday." Diane raised an eyebrow. "But you're not jumping for joy. What's eating you?" Ellen sighed, stirring her coffee. "It's not just the guest list, it's everything. I raised him alone, Di. Gave up vacations, nights out, my own dreams to make sure he had everything. And he didn't even fight for me when Sarah's mom wanted me out." Diane nodded, her expression softening. "He's young, Ellen, and he's in love. That makes people stupid sometimes. Doesn't mean he doesn't love you." "I know," Ellen said, her voice quieter, "but it hurts. And I'm not sure I trust him to keep his word." "Then make him prove it," Diane said, her tone firm. "You're his mom, not his doormat. Let him show you he means it." Ellen sipped her coffee, the bitterness grounding her. Diane was right. She'd spent too long being the one who fixed things. If Michael wanted her back in his life, he'd have to meet her halfway. That afternoon, Ellen's office in the Loop was a flurry of activity. Clients calling about gold, Coast condos, emails piling up about Lakeview rentals. But her focus was on a text from Michael. "Can I come by tonight? Need to talk." "Just us," she replied. 7 p.m. My place. Her condo wasn't the sleek River North loft Michael shared with Sarah, but it was home, warm, lived in, filled with memories of their life together. When Michael arrived, the sky was dark, the city lights glinting through the balcony doors. He looked tired, his navy coat damp from a light drizzle, his dark hair sticking to his forehead. He hugged her, longer this time, and she felt the boy he used to be in the tightness of his grip. "Mom," he said, sitting on her couch, his hands clasped. "I messed up big time. I should have stood up to Linda from the start." Ellen sat across from him, her heart torn between relief and caution. Why didn't you? He rubbed his neck, a gesture she knew meant he was nervous. Sarah's parents are intense. Linda's got this way of making you feel like you're ruining everything if you don't agree with her. I thought keeping the peace was the right call, but I was wrong. I hurt you, and I hate that. Ellen's throat tightened. You did. I've always been there for you, Michael. Always. To be cut out like that, it made me feel like I didn't matter. You do, he said, his voice breaking. You're my mom. I was an idiot, trying to juggle everyone's expectations. Sarah's on my side now. We told Linda the guest list is our call, not hers. You're not just invited, you're walking me down the aisle. Ellen blinked, her eyes stinging. Walking you down the aisle? Yeah, he said, a small smile, breaking through. Sarah's dad's doing her side, but I want you there for mine, if you'll do it. For a moment she couldn't speak. The image of walking Michael down the aisle, past the glittering Chicago skyline, was almost too much. She nodded, her voice unsteady. Of course I will. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing like it hadn't in months. He told her about Sarah's stress, Linda's overbearing plans, his own fears about starting a marriage under so much pressure. Ellen shared her hurt, her pride in him, her hope for their future. When he left, the rift wasn't fully healed, but it was mending. The weeks leading to the wedding were a whirlwind. Ellen threw herself into helping where she could, coordinating with the Art Institute's event team, offering input on the menu. Deep dish pizza sliders, a Chicago touch Sarah loved. Linda remained a prickly presence, her calls laced with subtle jabs. But Sarah and Michael held firm, their wedding taking shape as their own. Ellen met Sarah again, this time at a cafe in Wicker Park, where the air smelled of artisanal coffee and autumn leaves. Sarah was more relaxed, her auburn hair loose, her smile genuine. I'm sorry again, Ellen, she said over cappuccinos. I should have stood up to my mum sooner. You're family now, and I want you to feel that. Ellen reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You're making it right. That's what matters. The wedding day arrived under a crisp November sky. The Art Institute's rooftop transformed into a dreamscape of fairy lights and white roses. Lake Michigan sparkled in the distance, and Millennium Park's cloud gate reflected the golden afternoon light. Ellen stood in a navy gown, her heart full as she linked arms with Michael. He looked sharp in his tux, his eyes bright with nerves and joy. You ready, Mom? He whispered as the music swelled. Ready, she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. They walked down the aisle together, past rows of guests, friends, Sarah's family, even Linda, who managed a tight smile. Sarah waited at the altar, radiant in her gown, her eyes locked on Michael. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Vows exchanged under the Chicago skyline, a city that had shaped them all. At the reception, Ellen gave a toast, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses. To Michael and Sarah, she said, for finding each other and for reminding us that family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to fight for. The crowd cheered, and Michael hugged her, whispering, Love you, Mom. Sarah joined them, her smile warm, and for the first time, Ellen felt like part of their new family. Months later, Ellen stood in her office, closing a deal on a Lakeview brownstone. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Michael and Sarah, now settled, in their River North condo with a note, Thanks for everything, Mom. Dinner soon. She smiled, the Chicago skyline glowing outside. The city had tested her, but it had also given her back her son, a new daughter-in-law, and a strength she hadn't known she had. The hurt of the guest list was a scar, but scars told stories, and hers was one of love, resilience, and family found.